the things about this case that I just can't understand is how it might be possible that a memory could live essentially outside of the body for 40 years, waiting for it to become implanted in someone else's brain. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, my research has shown that memory is very much tied to the activity of even single cells of the brain. But there are other people who suggest that we have to look at things that are way smaller than single cells, at quantum physics, essentially, and that's really where the answer to how consciousness works is going to be found. There's an anesthesiologist in Arizona named Dr. Stuart Hameroff who has used the principles of quantum physics to develop a fascinating but controversial theory. He believes that memories are like waves of quantum information, and when we die, that they are released into the universe and sometimes transferred to a human embryo. So I convinced Randall to travel to Arizona with me to meet Dr. Hameroff and explore whether James Leininger's case may have a scientific explanation, not necessarily a supernatural one. So can you tell us a little bit about how you think of consciousness?
Well, I think most people would see the brain as a computer of 100 billion simple switches, each neuron being a switch. You can fire or not fire. But neurons as a cell are incredibly complicated. And I think we have to go down a level below the level of neurons, inside the neurons, to the level of the microtubule. The blood stops flowing and the oxygen isn't being delivered and the brain starts to lose it, die essentially. The quantum information that is consciousness, including memories, isn't necessarily lost, but can dissipate at large. So it's possible that consciousness, including memories, can exist outside the brain, outside the body. And in the case of near-death and out-of-body experience, would go back inside. If the patient died, then perhaps could be drawn back into another organism, another set of microtubules in a zygote or an embryo.
So do you believe it's possible you could be reincarnated?
It's possible, I hope so. We'll find out. I do think people who say that it's impossible are just wrong, because we don't understand what consciousness is. If we had a good explanation for consciousness based on the brain as a computer, then I would say no. But I think it's possible.
I learned a lot about how Dr. Hameroff thinks in terms of consciousness and its representation in the brain. But what he's presented to us is a theory. He doesn't have direct evidence.
Dr. Stuart Hameroff laid out a plausible theory about consciousness existing independent of the body, of what we know as life. Whether consciousness can then reinvest in a new body, I think Stuart has laid out how it's plausible. It's certainly scientific support for the possibility that James' story is true.